before the skyline, before the glass towers catching the morning sun, before the hum of traffic crossing concrete bridges, there is the sound of water. In 1900, Minneapolis begins with the roar of St. Anthony Falls, powerful and untamed, churning the Mississippi River into white spray and mist. The air smells of wet stone and freshly cut timber. The city is young, confident, and loud in its ambition. Wooden sidewalks creak under heavy boots, and horse hooves strike dirt streets that are slowly, deliberately being turned into something permanent. This is Minneapolis at the turn of the 20th century, a city that believes the future is something it can build with its own hands. At the dawn of 1900, Minneapolis is barely 50 years old, yet it already carries the weight of industry. Flour dust hangs in the air near the mills, coating clothes and lungs alike. Massive brick structures line the riverbanks, grinding wheat from the Great Plains into flour that feeds the nation and beyond. The city calls itself the flour milling capital of the world, and it is not an exaggeration. Companies like Pillsbury and Washburn Crosby dominate the skyline, their smokestacks and grain elevators standing as monuments to human ingenuity and relentless labor. The river is not a scenic backdrop. It is the engine of everything. Daily life in 1900 Minneapolis follows the rhythms of work and survival. Men rise early, many heading to mills, rail yards, or construction sites, while women manage households that run without electricity, refrigeration, or modern plumbing. Coal fires heat homes through brutal winters, and kerosene lamps push back the darkness. Children contribute where they can, running errands, working in shops, or helping at home. Leisure exists, but it is modest, often centered around church gatherings, local saloons, or community events. Life is demanding, and the city expects its residents to keep up. Transportation in this era reflects a city in transition. Horse-drawn wagons still dominate, sharing streets with streetcars that clang and spark as they move along steel rails. The electric streetcar system, expanding rapidly, stitches neighborhoods together and allows the city to spread outward. Trains arrive and depart constantly, bringing grain in and sending flour out, connecting Minneapolis to Chicago, the East Coast, and the wider world. Travel is physical and slow, and distance still feels real, measured in hours and days rather than seconds. Housing in 1900 tells its own story of class and aspiration. Modest wooden homes cluster near factories and rail lines, while larger houses rise along streets like Park Avenue and around the lakes, where wealthier families seek cleaner air and quieter surroundings. Immigrants from Scandinavia, Germany, Eastern Europe, and beyond carve out tight-knit neighborhoods, bringing their languages, foods, and traditions with them. Minneapolis is not yet diverse by modern standards, but it is already a mosaic of cultures, each shaping the city in subtle ways. Social structures in 1900 are rigid and unequal. Opportunity exists, but it is unevenly distributed. Laborers work long hours for low pay, and labor unrest simmers beneath the surface, occasionally boiling over into strikes and protests. Women's roles are largely confined to the home, though cracks are beginning to show as suffrage movements gain momentum. Racial inequality is deeply embedded, with Native American communities pushed to the margins and Black residents facing discrimination in housing, employment, and public life. The city's progress comes at a human cost that is rarely acknowledged in the moment. Technology in 1900 Minneapolis feels miraculous and limited at the same time. Electricity is spreading, but not everywhere. Telephones exist, but they are luxuries. News travels through newspapers, printed in massive presses that thrum day and night. Medical care is improving, yet disease remains a constant threat, and life expectancy is far shorter than it will be a century later. The city believes in progress, but it is progress built one invention at a time, each change arriving slowly enough to be debated and resisted. The natural environment in 1900 is both exploited and revered. The Mississippi River is harnessed, reshaped by dams and mills, yet it still floods, reminding residents of its power. Forests to the north supply lumber, while farmland stretches endlessly to the west. Minneapolis is surrounded by lakes that offer beauty and respite, though even then, pollution and development begin to leave their mark. Nature is seen primarily as a resource, something to be used wisely, but used nonetheless. As the 20th century unfolds, Minneapolis changes in waves rather than moments. Wars, economic booms, and depressions reshape the city again and again. By the time the calendar turns toward 2026, the Minneapolis of 1900 feels impossibly distant, yet its foundations remain underfoot. embedded in street grids, riverbanks, and the enduring presence of the Mississippi. In 2026, the city opens not with the roar of raw industry, but with a layered soundscape of traffic, conversation, music, and wind moving through glass and steel. The skyline reflects the sky itself, shimmering with modern architecture that values light as much as strength. Minneapolis is no longer defined by a single industry, but by diversity of ideas, cultures, and economies. The river still flows, but now it is framed by walking paths, parks, and restored historic structures that invite reflection rather than labor. Everyday life in 2026 Minneapolis moves at a different pace. People wake to alarms on smartphones, check weather forecasts instantly, and move through homes warmed by efficient heating systems and powered by invisible networks of electricity and data. Work takes many forms, from offices and hospitals to remote screens and creative studios. The city hums with coffee shops, co-working spaces, and small businesses that cater to lifestyles unimaginable in 1900. Time feels compressed, and the boundary between work and leisure often blurs. Transportation has transformed the experience of distance. Cars dominate the streets, though public transit, light rail, biking, and walking play increasingly important roles. Highways slice through areas that were once neighborhoods, a legacy of mid-century planning decisions that still shape social geography. Electric vehicles and rideshare services hint at another transition underway. Travel beyond the city happens in hours rather than days, and Minneapolis is firmly connected to global networks of trade, travel, and communication. Housing in 2026 reflects both innovation and tension. Sleek condominiums rise near downtown and along the river, while historic homes are preserved, renovated, and celebrated. At the same time, affordability remains a challenge, echoing the inequalities of the past in new forms. Neighborhoods continue to evolve, shaped by migration, economic shifts, and cultural expression. Communities advocate for inclusion, sustainability, and identity, aware of the mistakes made when development ignored human impact. The social structure of modern Minneapolis is more fluid, but still imperfect. Women hold leadership roles across industries. Conversations about race, equity, and justice are central to the city's identity, driven by both painful history and active civic engagement. Minneapolis in 2026 is a place where protest and dialogue are part of daily life, where the struggle to align ideals with reality is ongoing. The city no longer hides its conflicts. It confronts them, publicly and passionately. Technology defines the modern era in ways that would seem like science fiction to a resident of 1900. Information moves instantly. Healthcare uses advanced imaging, data analysis, and personalized treatment. Education extends beyond classrooms into digital spaces. At the same time, this constant connectivity brings new challenges, including information overload, privacy concerns, and a sense that life is always accelerating. Progress no longer arrives slowly, it arrives all at once. The environment, once treated mainly as a resource, now demands protection. Minneapolis invests in green spaces, renewable energy, and climate resilience. The lakes and river are cleaner than they were in the mid-20th century, though threats from climate change loom large. Winters are still cold, but they are changing, and residents are acutely aware that the natural systems supporting the city are fragile. Sustainability is no longer optional. It is central to planning and identity. Globally, Minneapolis in 2026 is a city connected far beyond its geographic size. Its corporations operate worldwide, its universities attract international students, and its culture reaches audiences through media and technology. The city contributes ideas as much as products, shaping conversations about design, healthcare, social justice, and urban living. It is no longer just a place where things are made. It is a place where ideas are tested and shared. When viewed side by side, Minneapolis in 1900 and Minneapolis in 2026 tell a story of transformation that is neither simple nor complete. The physical city has grown taller, wider, and more complex, but its true evolution lies in how people live, connect, and imagine their future. The mills that once defined the skyline are now museums and offices, reminders of an era when progress meant harnessing nature through force. Today, progress is measured in balance, inclusion, and sustainability, ideals still being pursued rather than fully achieved. Yet across more than a century, certain threads remain unbroken. The Mississippi River continues to shape the city's identity. the climate still demands resilience. The spirit of innovation present in the engineers of 1900 and the entrepreneurs of 2026 continues to drive change. Minneapolis has always been a city willing to reinvent itself, even when that reinvention is difficult or controversial. As the camera pulls back, the contrast between past and present becomes a single continuous motion rather than a division. The dirt streets of 1900 lead directly to the paved avenues of 2026. The hopes of mill workers echo in the ambitions of modern residents striving for opportunity, dignity, and meaning. Time reshapes buildings and systems, but the human desire to belong, to build, and to leave something lasting remains unchanged. In the end, Minneapolis is not just a location on a map, but a living record of human progress, marked by ambition, struggle, and renewal. From the roar of St. Anthony Falls powering flour mills to the quiet glow of a city skyline reflected in the river at night, the story of Minneapolis mirrors the broader story of modern civilization. It reminds us that cities are never finished, only carried forward by the people who call them home, each generation adding its own chapter to a story still being written.